And then the next question is, what health problems can result from an eating disorder? So I'm going to break this down into kind of the temporary things and then the potential long-term things. So for me, temporary, there was the issue of being just very exhausted most of the time. I remember I never actually got to the point where I passed out, but I remember by, mid-afternoon, I would be so exhausted, I'd just have to go into my room and just sleep because I didn't have any energy. During the days when I was struggling with bulimia, I've talked about this before, I dealt with a lot of soreness in my throat, in my esophagus, just from purging. And what I developed as far as long-term symptoms go, I've also talked about these a bit during Eating Disorder Awareness Week, but I have chronic hyperacidity in my stomach, and so that's kind of caused from a duration of time where I didn't have enough food in my stomach. So kind of those that year or those years when I was restricting a lot. And then another thing is just when I was struggling with bulimia, the binging and the purging, that's also really hard on your stomach acid. So I've done a lot of damage there. I don't know if it's permanent for life, but I'm still in the process of trying to get it under control. Another long-term side effect is I've developed osteoarthritis in my lower spine. And I remember when my chiropractor looked at my x-rays, he was kind of like, he told me if I wasn't sitting there right in front of him, he never would have thought that the x-rays were for someone as young as I was. He thought it was for someone much older. So the whole concept like osteoporosis and osteoarthritis, that comes from, having low bone density, which is something that results from not getting enough nutrition, not getting enough calcium. So that was a big issue. Another thing, like I mentioned, was the issues with my esophagus. I remember when it got really bad, I would lie down and I couldn't breathe properly sometimes. I'd be lying in bed and realize I couldn't breathe. And that's when things started getting really frightening for me, when I started realizing just how serious it was. And then I am one of the lucky ones, but when I was doing some research last night, just preparing for this class that I was speaking in. And like I said before, these questions that I'm answering, I'm posting a video every day, but these questions came from my professor who asked me to speak in one of his human kinetics intro classes. So that's where these questions are coming from, in case you just started watching the videos today. So I was doing some research just to prepare for this talk, and I found out that not only is anorexia nervosa responsible for it has the highest mortality rate of any other mental illness, but also 20% of cases of anorexia are actually fatal and do end in death. And I know that sounds like a small number. I remember when I first heard that, I was like, oh, 20%, like that's pretty low. But at the same time, if you look at it this way, if you were going into surgery or you were considering going to surgery and the doctor told you that, there was an 80% success rate with that particular surgery, which means, there's a 20% chance that you would never wake up from it. Suddenly that 20% number starts looking pretty big. And I think it's really important that that's the way we view it when we think about the mortality rate of anorexia nervosa. I don't, unfortunately, know the stats off the top of my head for other eating disorders like bulimia or binge eating, but I assume that they are also quite frightening.